Hey, thanks for coming tonight. It's good to see you. Grab yourself a drink, pull up a chair. I've got a story to tell you. Cheers, mate. Welcome to Tom's Kitchen After Hours. Season 3, The Misadventures of Jimmy Head. Bit 4, Rehab, Daymare. Part 4, The Means to an End. There was a sandstone cottage a few hundred metres from the main building that was being renovated. Rumour had it that there was a mass killing there of the nuns. They'd say that every time they'd painted over the bullet holes in the blood-stained walls, the blood kept reappearing. I never saw any blood, so I figure it was just a tactic to fill us with fear. I was assigned to help rip up the floorboards and lay new timbers. This was the only thing I enjoyed in that shithole. I'd grown up watching Dad do woodwork, so it sort of made me feel at home. The main building was overrun with blowflies, as there was no air conditioning and no fly screens on the windows that were always open due to the heat. One day, the skinny grinning guy shut himself in a room, shut the windows and filled the air with fly spray. They said he was in there laughing, so they left him alone. A little while later, after the laughter stopped, his handler went in and found him unconscious on the floor. He was rushed by ambulance to hospital, but they announced that night that he was dead. I'll never know what was going through his mind. All I know is he'd stopped smiling long before that day. Something about him that always stayed with me was at my first chew-out session, his face was the one that stood out the most. The anger that poured out of his tiny body was more intense than anyone else's. Compared to the grinning lad chasing lambs full of glee, he seemed like two different people. After seeing how they treated him, I can understand where that hatred came from. I just hope he finally found some peace. Most of the inmates walked around after that like the last bit of their souls had been sucked out. The staff must have feared that we might rise up against them, so a few days later they booked an entire cinema in Goulburn, and we were treated to a private showing of the Muppet movie. I only remember the beginning bit where Kermit the Frog was riding a bicycle down a country road, and then I fell into a deep sleep. When the lights came on, everyone looked like they'd just woken up. That excursion was the first and last act of kindness they ever showed us. The next day, it was back to the daily grind. Me and another bloke were assigned to a huge pile of logs, and we were told to stack them neatly nearby. I don't remember his name, but I remember he had blonde hair, and he kind of looked like a surfie. On the first day, walking to the wood pile, the ground in front of us looked strange. It was like a brown blanket moving towards us. We moved out of its way as a sea of huge huntsman spiders marched by, maybe in search of blowflies. The bloke with me, he wasn't bothered at all. He'd seen them hundreds of times. He reckoned that if we stayed where we were, they'd leap through the air and cover us from head to toe. But they weren't dangerous, he informed me. Fuck that, I thought. I'd die of a heart attack. After a few days of working on the woodpile together, we trusted each other to speak freely. He told me he'd been saving his cigarette rations for the day when he'd escape. Well, I said, today seems like a good day for it. He'd been there for a long while and had learned not to get into any trouble. And as a reward, they allowed him to accept a watch that his mother had sent him for his birthday. Then at lunchtime, he told the handlers that he'd left his watch at the woodpile, so they told us to go together to get it. He grabbed his smokes from the dorm, and outside we went. He said leaving from the front fence would be the first place they'd look for us. So even though we had no idea what was on the other side, that was thick scrub, we jumped the fence and bolted as fast as we could. About half an hour later we found a road and headed north. A short while later a trucker gave us a lift to Goulburn. As we were getting out, he slipped $5 in the other guy's hand and said we looked like we needed a feed. Before we had a chance to spend it, the cops grabbed us and took us to the station. Apparently the truckie was worried about us and reported to the cops where he dropped us off. The cops were nothing like the arsehole who threatened me months beforehand. They put us in a cell and called our parents. Then they gave us hamburgers, fries and a Coke. Honestly, it tasted like the best meal I'd ever eaten. Funny thing, after all these years of not remembering that guy's name, while writing about him it suddenly came to me. Tony. Back then it was about a 3-hour drive from Penrith to Goulburn Police Station. Dad got there in 2. And I'd never seen him so happy to see me. I asked the cops if Tony could come with us, but the cops said he'd have to stay and wait for his parents to come. Geez, I hope they came for him. After helping me to escape, he didn't deserve to end up with his head in a vice at the boys' home. On the drive back home, Dad mentioned that I'd left home as Chubsy, but now I looked like a stick figure. So we pulled into a diner and he ordered me a steak dinner. It was pretty amazing, but the hamburger lunch for a starving kid was hard to beat. My shrunken stomach couldn't eat even half of that dinner, so we got a doggy bag and took it with us. We didn't talk much on the way home, but every now and then I'd catch him looking at me with a smile on his face. I didn't go to Goulburn with any valuables, just a few changes of clothes and my photo of Matthew. A few weeks after my escape, they sent them to me in a box. Whoever packed my things made it a point to tear the photo of Matthew in half. Their final stab at my heart. I taped it back together and was thankful that they didn't totally destroy it. I was free from their clutches, and nothing they could do could hurt me anymore once the nightmares stopped. All right, that's it for tonight in Ton's Kitchen After Hours. Thanks for dropping by and keeping me company. If you want to hear more stories from my weird old past, make sure to follow the podcast and come back for the next episode. I'll leave the light on for you. Until then, take care and good night.